The Black Hills of southwestern South Dakota is home to the sixth largest cave in the world, a geological extremity with a unique history. Wind Cave National Park, cradled in the southernmost region of the Black Hills, spans over 150 miles and is home to a biodiverse ecosystem both above and below ground. The Lakota peoples of North and South Dakota have a special connection to the lands of Wind Cave National Park. For example, Wind Cave is the origin of their emergence story.
In this story, Wind Cave is a passageway, and somewhere, hidden deep inside this passageway, is a portal to the spirit world, and that's where the people were living. They were waiting until the earth was ready for them. Iktomi the trickster opened a hole in the ground and sent the wolf down inside, through the cave's passageways, until it found the portal and went through to meet the humans. Once there, it showed them everything that was on its back, and they took out the clothes, and they passed them around and tried them on and tasted the berries. But it was the meat that they really liked, because there's nothing like that in the spirit world. They wanted more. So the wolf told them, if you come with me to this place called the earth, you can have all these things and more. The ones who had tasted the meat went with the wolf. When winter came, they weren't ready for it, so they just sat down on the ground and they started to cry. Well, it was at that time that the Creator heard them and asked why they were there. The Creator said, you should not have disobeyed me, because now I have to punish you. And the way the Creator did that was by transforming them, turning them from people to these great wild beasts. And this was the first bison herd. So some time passed, and finally the earth was ready. Tokahe led the people out of the cave. The Creator told them to follow that bison, because if you follow the bison, you'll have everything you need to live on this earth.
Wind Cave National Park still remains an important cultural region for the Lakota Indigenous today. In 1881, Tom and Jessie Bingham heard the faint sound of wind despite it being a calm day. Eventually, they found a tiny entrance to Wind Cave. And upon further inspection, the wind currents from the cave blew Jessie's hat off of his head. These currents are caused by changes in atmospheric pressure. Exploration started almost immediately, with several written records available online. For example, pioneer Frank Herbert wrote, "We had to jump down a hole that I could just about squeeze through, 6 or 7 feet. I started down with my lantern, had to crawl on hands and knees facing a terrible wind for about 50 feet, and then the main hole seemed to be going down at right angles and very steep, but it gave a good foothold." During the 1930s, the Great Depression left 25% of Americans completely unemployed. The Dust Bowl was destroying agricultural land, and America was struggling to stay afloat. Although Wind Cave National Park was established in 1903, the absence of adequate funding left the park underdeveloped. Luckily, with the establishment of President Roosevelt's New Deal, the Civilian Conservation Corps was created. This program employed young, unmarried men to improve recreational lands while providing them with training as well as room and board. At Camp Wind Cave, 240 men were employed over the course of 8 years. They maintained cave trails, built concrete steps, added a new lighting system, planted trees, improved roads, and constructed buildings. All of these renovations are still apparent in the park. In 1942, the Civilian Conservation Corps program was terminated due to the draft for World War II, and Camp Wind Cave was closed. Exploration efforts were relatively slow until the National Speleological Society began an official expedition, mapping 3 miles of the cave in just 10 days. Later on, geologic research helped to create a timeline of the Black Hills region. The rock record in Wind Cave National Park began about 350 million years ago when marine carbonates were deposited along with sulfates. The chemical instability of the sulfates caused deformation of the rocks, recrystallization of minerals in the rocks, and the transformation of anhydrite to gypsum. Through this process, the carbonate rocks cracked and fractured, and gypsum filled in the cracks. Next, limestone was exposed on the surface of the Earth as a result of mild tectonic uplift, which allowed oxygen-rich water to infiltrate throughout the rock. Sulfides reacted to the oxygen-rich water by becoming sulfuric acid and expanding within the fractures. Sulfates were infiltrated with carbonate-rich water to create red-brown calcite, which can be seen in Wind Cave, manifested as honeycomb-shaped boxwork veins. Exposure at the surface also allowed surface karst, or sinkholes in caves, to begin forming due to the infiltration of water. All of these events helped form the Madison Formation. And around 300 million years ago, the Melaleuza sandstone was deposited and filled most of the karst structures. 150 million years ago, limestone and crystalline white calcite was deposited next, with depths of 1.5 to 2 kilometers. From about 70 million to 40 million years ago, the Black Hills were significantly uplifted. Quartz crystals filled faults and fractures during this time. After tectonic uplift, the Madison Formation was exposed once again and heavily eroded, which allowed for groundwater to flow throughout. Caves began to form during this time, but the erosion was too rapid for them to become significant. Later on, the drying climate drained the groundwater from the small caves. This was the primary event for the formation of Wind Cave. As the groundwater drained, it significantly weathered the cave walls. Around 23 million years ago, the caves were flooded once more and deposited a calcite crust still seen in the lowest levels of Wind Cave, although much of it has been weathered away. Since then, drainage of groundwater has been occurring very slowly, and the erosion of cave walls has essentially ceased. However, some groundwater from the Madison Aquifer is still present, forming significant lakes in Wind Cave, such as Calcite Lake, Windy City Lake, and even What the Hell Lake, named because of its sudden transformation from a dry passage to a remarkable body of water, seemingly overnight. Understanding the rock record at Wind Cave National Park is beneficial for a number of reasons. One is to piece together the region's paleo-environmental and climatic history. Extinct shelled creatures and corals have been preserved in limestone from 350 million years ago. This indicates that the Black Hills region was a warm, humid, tropical ocean when that limestone was deposited. Similarly, fossils of rhinos, horses, turtles, and tiny deer in the rock record from 30 million years ago indicates that the Black Hills region was a warm subtropical savanna with distinct wet and dry seasons. The fossils of picas from 11,000 years ago shows that the climate was very cold and likely glacial, and an increase in carbon-13 in plant fossils from 9,000 years ago indicates a period of slight warming and dehydration, similar to today's climate. Understanding the climatic past of this region can be beneficial for climatologists to predict how arid regions, such as the Black Hills, will respond to climate change over time. Although the climate of the Earth has fluctuated naturally over time, recently human activity has greatly accelerated this change. Studying differences between natural climate change from the past and human-caused climate change in the present can help researchers form solutions for Earth's future. Wind Cave National Park now is a semi-arid region with mild winters and warm summers. Uniquely, the park is much warmer and drier than the surrounding plain regions. This is mostly because moist air from the Pacific Ocean rises and cools when it hits the Rocky Mountains, falling as rain and snow. By the time the air reaches Wind Cave, the air is dry and warm. Another important contributor is the Arctic air from Canada, which travels south and is deflected by the eastern and western slopes of the Black Hills before it can reach the southernmost Wind Cave region. These steep slopes, formed by stronger rocks such as pegmatite, limestone, and sandstone, combined with slow-moving storms and several watersheds and aquifers, make the Black Hills region susceptible to flash flooding hazards. Mass wasting, such as rockfalls from gravity, are also common in the park itself. Above ground, the park is a great recreational spot due to the vast biodiversity. The plains are home to bison, elk, and pronghorns, which were reintroduced into the region by the Wind Cave National Game Preserve in 1912. Later on, the endangered black-footed ferret was also reintroduced. Other mammals, such as American badgers, prairie dogs, coyotes, and mountain lions dot the plains. Birds of prey like golden eagles, red-tailed hawks, and great horned owls are sometimes spotted. Although many species of snake are common, the rattlesnake is the only venomous one. Although the prairie ecosystem is stunning and diverse, the cave ecosystem is infinitely more incredible, yet also unappreciated. Wind Cave is home to 11 bat species, including long-eared bats and little brown bats. But one truly unique feature about the Wind Cave ecosystem is a lack of life aside from bats. Most cave ecosystems house blind fish, crustaceans, insects, worms, and other creatures, but Wind Cave actually lacks most of this biodiversity. Cave ecosystems are already extremely underrepresented in research studies and conservation plans, but the largely homogeneous ecosystem of Wind Cave is especially unique. Cave ecosystems are also very vulnerable to human activities such as urbanization, erosion, and groundwater pollution. Many unprotected caves across the U.S. have been damaged or destroyed due to human activity. The Wind Cave ecosystem is currently being impacted by a fungus called white nose syndrome, a primarily cave-dwelling fungus that is fatal to bats. Since its discovery in 2006, it has killed over 6 million bats. The long-eared bats of Wind Cave, although common just a few years ago, are now critically endangered. Although cave ecosystems are unique and must be protected, bats are also uniquely important organisms. They're a natural pest controller and save the agricultural industry an estimated $3.7 billion a year in pesticide usage. More importantly, they're necessary for pollination. Without bats, we would lose access to about 80 medicines that come from bat-reliant plants. Conservation of areas like Wind Cave National Park also offers new opportunities to educate the public on environmental and biological issues. Visitors are educated on bats' bad rep, such as association with witchcraft, and their benefits to humans and surrounding ecosystems. Then, they give public tips on how to protect bats, such as decontaminating yourself before entering caves, raising awareness about bats, and dispelling myths. Wind Cave National Park is an incredible region with extensive Indigenous and American history, informational geological records, and beautiful ecological diversity. For those visiting or driving through South Dakota, this park is a must-see.